documentary. This documentary is, in one word, powerful. The thing that really translated was power and what happens when you have power. The film is at once inspiring and also just very frustrating because you feel like you want to go there with him, but you're not sure where he's trying to go. It felt like you're watching somebody who died fight really hard against a system that's just never going to understand them. All right, guys, so I'm really excited because today I just came back from seeing In Whose Name. It's a new documentary about Kanye West, aka Ye, and it details some of the most controversial moments of his life and career in the last few years. It starts in 2018, so you got to understand this was a crazy time for fans and people just in general. This was a time when Trump had come into office. It was very controversial, and we get to see his mind state and train of thought throughout this and really get a lot of his opinions in it.
We inside current slavery, we just more expensive now.
That we've never really seen before. Throughout the movie, I kept thinking that this movie is about power. And it's very fitting because he has a song called Power. I thought it was really interesting to see Candace and Charlie Kirk in the room in 2018, basically going over politics with him, and Candace having a chart and basically explaining that your celebrity can go further and reach further than just the political situations and actually have like a substantial change.
Whoever can control culture can control politics. You being open to different ideas, different conversations, you wearing a MAGA hat.
And Charlie Kirk just kind of absorbing it. Really, the struggle that I think Kanye was predicting was this fight for freedom of speech. And throughout the first third of the documentary, I think we really get to see that he saw this like tide coming in of this war on free speech. And with that, he was very adamant. And I think people weren't really understanding like where his mind state was and why he was fighting so hard to keep the red hat on. And I think in this documentary, it shows a really strong point towards basically what his journey and mission was, which was, you know, freedom of speech. So throughout the movie, I wrote a couple notes because there's a lot of things coming at you. This movie isn't very plot heavy, but it is very like moment heavy. So there's so many moments and ideas. In 2018, we get to see when he's on SNL, this performance we know was kind of controversial because he wore the red hat and basically made some people feel uncomfortable. There's a moment where Chris Rock goes up to Kanye and basically says, "This happened with Sinead O'Connor. People thought she was crazy. 20 years later, everybody's like, she's a genius." And he goes, "You're right. You're always right." I don't know if he could process it, but I think he definitely felt like he just put a target on his back by doing that. And moments later, we see Michael Che basically come and confront him and saying like, "Bro, I got love for you, but you shouldn't have thrown me under the bus like that." Like as a black person, I guess he felt challenged by what he said, saying like, "You're putting me on the other side of this thing when like really I'm trying to be there with you, but you're turning me into an op," basically. So in this movie, I really thought about just the emotions and like the weight of the responsibility he must have felt. I think Kanye just has these really strong instincts and emotions towards things. He can feel the tide coming in and he feels like he has to jump in, say something or do something. And sometimes it's so early that people don't see where it's coming from. But when you put some time in it, you see that he's just really early to like a conversation we're not having yet. And now in 2025, I feel like what he was doing and his fight for freedom of speech was even more relevant. It's more relevant today than it was when it happened. In this film, we get to see like all types of Ye. Like we get to see like him being a genius or being creative, but we also get to see him very angry, like screaming and stomping around and like crying and things that like we've heard about and we've seen about. Like a lot of people will see him rant on stage and think like this guy has problems. And I think in this documentary we get to see that there's levels. Like there, like when he's ranting, he's not necessarily angry, he's just passionate. In this movie, we get to see him frustrated and angry and crying and upset and stomping and really just making a point that he should be allowed to express himself however he chooses. And every time somebody tries to put a cap on his expression, that's when it like really, really frustrates him. And there's like points that I thought were really relevant. There was a point where he says later in the movie, like, I don't feel like I can cry because I feel like I cry wrong. Like people think I cry wrong. And I just really related to that moment. And I felt like that says a lot about the way he handles situations. Sometimes he'll drop like something very deep or like very troubling in a very casual way. And I think he struggles with expressing himself in a way that doesn't become controversial or bigger than the subject itself. And it's interesting and it's troubling because it shows that at his level of success and accomplishment, he doesn't feel like he can accurately just be himself, that it always has to be translated in an approachable way or communicated in a way that doesn't get taken in a salacious clip farmed way, you know? Like it's like he can't just cry, that if he cries that it'll lead to him going into a hospital because people will say, why is this person crying, like they must be mentally ill. And that's one thing I took away from the movie. I mean, this is a movie, so definitely there are portions selected to tell a sort of narrative, but definitely throughout this film with what was used, I don't feel like he's mentally ill necessarily. Like I think he's actually just dealing with a high level of stress. The things that he's going through throughout this documentary, you can see any sane person just losing their mind, you know? Like I don't think it's out of the ordinary to say like he's just dealing with an immense level of pressure. And also his level of sensitivity seems to be very high. Like he's very in touch with his instincts and feelings about subjects. So I can see it be very difficult to like maneuver through, you know, public pressures, you know. When it's just on him, I think it's all love, it's all spirituality, and it's all about positivity. I think when it comes into artistry, that's when he feels compelled to push and push the narrative. Like I feel like at one point he meets up with this architect and his idea is to just basically get his mind off of all the politics and try to get back into the arts and get into architecture and everything. But even then it sort of derails into like the stresses that he's going through as far as being like, man, I can't even have my own opinions in art, you know? It's like I'm getting pushback or being told what's not possible. I think from this documentary it shows that when it comes to fashion or when it comes to fashion or it comes to music or it comes to architecture, he finds like this freedom of being able to innovate and challenge ideas. And as he continues to try to change things and be controversial within every space, he feels pushback, and with that, it sullies like a lot of his love for each thing that he loves in life. And those were the parts that I think were relatable, but they were also troubling because like it's one thing to disagree with somebody's politics, but then when they go to build a house, then you're going to tell them what's not possible. And at parts he's just pretty much affirms like, hey, I'm right in this, you're wrong, I know what I'm doing, I'm not asking your opinions, I'm saying what I want to do. And you know, he's entitled. If he's paying these people or he's consulting them for ideas, he doesn't necessarily want to hear like a negative pushback. He kind of wants to dissect his ideas and spitball them, throw them against the wall and see what they say. But I don't think he really wants to hear any negativity, especially when it comes to, you know, futuristic ideas or things that don't exist. Like, how are you going to tell me this thing is wrong if it doesn't exist yet, if we haven't built it? Like, how are you going to tell me that this is a bad idea if no one's tried it yet? The film is at once inspiring and also just very frustrating because you feel like you want to go there with him, but you're not sure where he's trying to go. And that just seems to be the narrative throughout. And I realized that this is the way I think he chooses to solve his problems. It's like, I don't know the answer, but I have a feeling about something. And I feel like if I keep, you know, like shaking the tree, something's going to come of it. Something's going to reveal itself. And I think he specifically pushes people and pushes their buttons or says the things he knows is against their politics or agitates them, to see the response, because the response tells you something. Like if you wear the red hat and people treat you different or act a certain way, there's something going on there. Like there's something telling you like the way you think is wrong in our opinions. And then he goes, why? And then they don't explain anything. They just say, take the hat off. I think those things, they show you something. And I think in music or in architecture or in politics, he just does the thing that people say is wrong to figure out why it's wrong. And through that, he's able to innovate. So I found that very interesting. That's kind of the strongest takeaway I took from watching the film that I hadn't realized initially. And I think my biggest question in Kanye's career is like somebody who's such a like rebellious person that's so against the grain and wants to break establishments and basically just tear down everything that is like mainstream narrative culture. Like, how are you able to make such good songs? Like, how are you so good at making popular songs? Like a person who's this against everything, you would think they would be more experimental. And to my knowledge, I feel like Yeezus is probably the most experimental that Kanye's ever gone. And even with that, he has bangers. He has Blood on the Leaves. He has Black Skinhead. He has like these like really great songs that have been in movie trailers and on the radio. And it's like, how was he able to make these pop songs that also go against everything that was contemporary? The thing that I think explained it for me a little bit was like when he said I cry wrong, because it showed that he's super aware of public perception. People, I think, might feel like he's disconnected from his community or disconnected from the social problems of the world. And in this film, I just feel like you see that he is just super aware of everything. There's a part in this film later on when he's recording Donda and he's listening to like an early version of Find God that has like Pusha T's verse on it. And you can hear from the lyrics they have to do with like institutional slavery and these ideas that he's against. And at a certain point, he just goes, yeah, I don't like the verse. And Playboy Cardi says, why you don't like Pusha T's verse? You don't like what he's saying? And then he's like, not for this album. Like we're not doing that on this album, which it just shows like he's so aware, but he knows that like it's just not a narrative he wanted to push. And you have to respect it, because this is also Kanye that on College Dropout, he was talking about racism and, like they say racism's still alive. They just be concealing it or whatever. Like he's always talked about these things. He talked about it during Hurricane Katrina when he said George Bush don't care about black people. Like he's always talked about these things, and he's always supported these forward-thinking woker movements. And I think after doing all that, that's just where he ended up. He ends up in this place where he doesn't want to continue thinking about these things. And throughout the documentary, he expresses his push for wanting more freedom and not being confined and not being in labels. And that's a big portion of this documentary, is him trying to get out of all his business deals, to the point that you hear Kim trying to plead with him and saying like, look, I have partnerships with people and I don't see them as being my master. We're working in conjunction. They're affording the life I live. And him just saying no. And that's not his experience. That's not his feeling towards the situation. He wants freedom of speech. He wants freedom to create. He wants freedoms to be wrong, freedoms to cry, like freedoms to just be. And at the very beginning in 2018, he's telling Candace, like, this is the problem in the black communities. We're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to say the wrong thing.
And you're black and you're perfect. You're the housekeeper.
Yes.
A lot of people have been befuddled by Kanye's actions and being like, how could he? And at a certain point, he goes into DEFCON 3. And this was like pretty much the time he got super canceled. And he explains DEFCON 3 in here better than he's ever explained it publicly, where he says like, DEFCON 3 is everything. It's like I'm going against everything. Like I'm every bad name that you could ever say. And by that point, it seemed like he had made up his mind and was leading towards this idea of like, I have to be the most canceled person. You know, I have to bear this burden in order to actually be free. At the point that he left SNL and went to Uganda, I think at that point he realized that all the money and the fame is never going to like ease his mind, that he's always going to feel beholden to companies and to other people's opinions. And the only way to really let it all go and have freedom is to just let it all go. And with that, he had to say all the wrong things. And that's pretty much where we lead in this movie. It's just him going in this sort of pathway to freedom, which to most people will look as like a descent into hell or like a descent into just cancellation. I think in this documentary we see what his principal struggle was. Even at a point, Billy Bush asked him like, you know, you always know what you're doing. What is this? Like, what is this season? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is the point of this? And I think he's just trying to be like, I think he just really wants to be himself and be allowed to be himself. And for somebody who's accomplished so much, it is troubling if you can't be yourself after everything. I think every time he truly wants to get in his genius bag, he has to go to this controversial place. Like he has to push all the buttons. And with that, you don't know how far it's going to go. And I think right now we're at the tail end of one of those periods of genius level art coming off of the last work that he's done. If you've seen it, you've seen it. And, you know, for me personally, I support art. To me, that's very principal to freedom of speech, which is also principal to why America has had the success it's had, is because of the allowance of freedom of speech and the allowance of thought and to create art, especially in art. Like art should be allowed to challenge ideas and be wrong and be stupid and be funny and be scary and be troubling. So definitely I enjoyed this documentary. It was very heavy throughout, so it's hard to say it was like super fun or super inspirational, but there were a lot of ideas in there. There's some that are very relevant right now. There's some that maybe might be more relevant in the future. The challenges that he faced within the music industry, I think, are very relevant. I think Drake's going through a lot of those issues with labels and people just trying to get their independence and being allowed to do what they want and not feel social pressure to create a certain way or push a certain narrative. I think this film will help a lot of people who haven't been paying attention to everything understand a little better. It might be a little too chaotic. There's not a very clear narrative. I know more and understand the context of a lot of these decisions. This isn't really a music biopic. It's not even a political biopic. It's definitely just a very unique niche thing. It's like if you like Kanye, you're influenced by him, inspired by him, interested, you really get to see like the struggles and the sacrifices that he takes in order to create. And I don't necessarily feel like he's crazy, but I do feel like he sacrifices 150%, 1,000% to his art to the point that it can come off as maybe narcissistic, maybe, you know, rude, maybe abusive, because the weight that he places on his own shoulders to deliver, you know, very compelling art is very troubling. And I can see people rejecting it, just not seeing the perspective in it. At a certain point, he tells the director of this documentary, Nico, you've been faithful to the mission, you know, and it sounds crazy, but you know, sometimes you have to pick your battles. You have to be faithful. And as a person who's doing a documentary, you should be unbiased and just capture things. A lot of people have left Kanye for his ideals. A lot of people have jumped on because they feel like the world needs a change and that the mainstream narrative is leading us the wrong path. I think this movie is just a very American portrayal of fighting for freedom of speech. And I don't think there's anybody in music that's ever fought as hard as Ye has. So I think he needs to be respected, protected, supported, And even with support, it is difficult because it does seem like he pushes people and pressures people to find those points to make changes. So I don't think there'll ever be a period within his lifetime where he'll be 100%, appreciated, because he's specifically looking for problems to fix them. So I appreciate that part of his artistry, and it's sad. And to me, it was emotional. I felt very emotional throughout the movie because it felt like you're watching somebody who died fight really hard against a system that's just never going to understand them. It's crazy he's still alive. So many people have died for less, so it's like it's wild. It's super wild. So that pressure, like if I feel that way, imagine how he must feel. So Kanye basically expresses like if this film doesn't have a through line narrative, I'm just gonna look crazy. So like this movie needs to make some sort of sense. And you see Nico express that a lot of people that come into Kanye's life, they want to be part of it because it's a great moment, but they also want their movie. Like they want to be the main character in their show. But it's hard when you're a part of somebody's movie that's just always going to be so much greater than what you can accomplish on your own. And I take that as sort of him signing off the film, saying like, okay, I did as much as I could, but now I need to live my life. And wow, this kid came in at 18 years old, or I think younger. I don't know. He came in and he dedicated his life towards documenting this period of time. So, I give it up to him for really sticking through and getting it done, like for Cootie and Chike that did the Genius documentary, it took them years to get around to compiling that footage and making something of it. And definitely you can watch that before watching this if you want the earlier periods, because this movie doesn't do that much to tell you much about his origin story or what he went through. This just starts in the mix of all the wild controversies. A lot of times movies that are made by the artist or intimately with footage, it's not allowed or shown all the controversial parts. It's more like a puff piece. This movie was not that at all. This movie was very raw, very gritty. He explains it, the highs and the lows. Like life should show, movies should show, art should show all the highs and the lows. If not, everything's just gray. So I appreciate it. I give this movie about a 7 or 8 out of 10. I thought it was very, very interesting. It lacks certain narrative structures to really bring it all together, but this is a very interesting, intimate piece. So to me, this is bigger than like even a documentary or film. This is an art piece that can't be replicated. Thanks for watching this review reaction. It was a crazy film. There was a lot to take away. And definitely, if you haven't seen the leaked version of this movie, maybe find a link. It's like 3 hours long, and there's a whole bunch of other footage that wasn't used in this film. And you get to see way more of this. I feel like they should release that as well, because that was super interesting, compelling, and it's from around the same time period. I think that was just more of an assembly cut. This was a whole different thing. I was excited to watch a whole new package documentary, so that was cool. But yeah, definitely, if you like this review or you hated the film, leave a comment. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more reviews.